The purpose of this webinar is to talk about writing custom reports using SpiraTeam. And the agenda for today, we're going to go through an overview of the reporting functionality in SpiraTeam, how it works. And we're going to be talking then, oops, it's on a slideshow, let me just do it the old-fashioned way. So basically we're going to be going through the two different ways you can write custom reports. One is taking our standard reports and how you might change the styling, change some of the content, how you can basically take the data that we already have and change the presentation of it. And we're then going to talk about how you would write a custom section, which is when you take a query that you write from scratch and you can basically build your own data in the system. And so before we get into the details of actually using the reporting system, a little bit of overview of how reporting works in SpiraTeam we thought would be helpful. So the way it works is inside of SpiraTeam you have your project data, and that's all of the requirements, the test cases, the defects, all of the different parts of the system you want to report on. And then the query engine in SpiraTeam will take that information and it will turn that into a set of data in XML. And that XML will be typically a combination of different pieces of data put together. So it might be, for example, a list of all the requirements, and for each requirement it might be the associated test cases and the associated defects. And it takes that and builds a single data packet. And depending on what the user has chosen, it may also be filtered. So it might be just, for example, approved requirements. It might be requirements that are in certain statuses. It might be requirements with a certain priority. So that's a filtered data set, and that's the data that's available to actually report on and to generate the report from. Then what we're going to talk about mostly in this webinar is what SpiraTeam does then is it takes the templates that you've defined in the administration section, the different report sections and templates which we'll be going through, and the report engine takes that data, the XML that we have from the system, your project data, and it turns it into an intermediate report format. And that's basically an HTML document. And we chose HTML because the rich text in SpiraTeam is actually stored as HTML. So if you put in a rich text description with headings and subheadings, it's all ultimately going to be HTML behind the scenes. And so the single most comprehensive format that can take all of the information is HTML. And then what we do is we build a report in HTML format. The last thing we then do is, depending on what format you chose as the output, we either just serve up the HTML pretty much as is, although we do add a header and a footer to it and some basic CSS styling. But otherwise what we'll do is convert that HTML document into a PDF, an MS Word document, an Excel sheet, and basically we take the HTML and are converting it at the final stage. And that's basically the reporting pipeline. Take the data from the system using a query of some form, either a standard query that we've got in the system or one that you've written, turn it into data, translate it into a printed format, which is HTML, and then convert the printed format from HTML into the format that you chose. So those are the different sections of reporting. Now, the rest of this webinar is going to be actually using SpiraTeam to do that. And so if we go into SpiraTeam, right here, you'll see basically the projects at a typical My page. Most of what we'll be spending time on is in the administration section. And what we will be doing today is actually also covered in a blog that we wrote about a year or two ago, and it goes through the reporting section. So if you want to look at the blog whilst listening to the webinar, feel free to go ahead. So to customize the reports in SpiraTeam, you typically go into the administration section, and it's under the System Edit Report section. One of the reasons why we basically made it an admin section function and why it's a system admin function is that when you write reports, you're getting unfiltered access to the entire database, which across all projects. And so in the process of building the report, it's important that the person who has access to the data is authorized to do so. So in order to write reports, you do have to be an administrator. To run the reports, you just need the permission in the project that the report is being run in. And we'll talk a little bit about security aspects as well, because there are some security aspects that are important. And if you look at the report section, we do see we categorize them. And these categories are just general. They don't change the report and how it runs, but what they will do is in the reporting sections when an end user sees, we group them by category. It also determines the permissions you need to run the report. So if you create a report that shows requirements and you miscategorize it as an incident report, someone who's got permissions to see incidents but not requirements can run that report and see requirements, which they shouldn't. So it's really important when you look at the report, choose a category that matches the data, because that will ultimately determine the permissions the user needs. And so what we would typically do, the first thing we're going to do is customize a report. So let's look at a report and what it looks like as standard. So if we go into reporting, let's say we take our standard requirements detail report. And we're just going to do it in HTML for right now. And let's say we look at the report and we want to choose it, all the sections you can have in the report. We're not going to filter it. We're just going to run it. And it's going to run in the background. And it's going to basically generate an HTML report with all the information for those requirements. There we go. And so we're going to view the report. This is a typical report. And one common need that people have is if you look at this requirement, so requirement 5, we're showing all this information here, all this meta information. And a lot of times people don't want all that information in their report. It isn't necessarily useful for them. It's not something they want to see. And maybe they want to create a more sanitized requirement report that's got some of the same information, but maybe just a little bit different. Also, if you look down, we've got tables. And if you look here at the tables, we've got things like test coverage and requirements. We might want to change some of the tables, remove some of the columns, or maybe instead of displaying test status, we want to show test priority. Things like that. So being able to modify the data that we have in a report is the first sort of our agenda items, and that's a very typical need. And to do that, what you'll do is go back into the edit report section and find the report that you want to change. In this case, it was requirements detailed, and we're going to clone it. And the reason why we make you clone the report is that in time we have found people will often want to change the report, they make changes to it, and then they forget what they did, and they want to get the old report back. And if we let you change the built-in report, once marked as default, there's a good chance you won't ever get it back very easily, or we have to send it to you and you have to put it back in. So to avoid all those problems, we make you clone the report. And so if you decided that you wanted to create a new custom report for requirements, and you want the old one to be gone, you can simply take the old one and make it inactive. So we've got our new custom report, which is right here. Copy of requirements detailed. We'll edit it. And we'll change the name first of all so we can find it more easily. So we're just going to call it requirements report without metadata. And you can change the description if you want. That doesn't actually appear in the report, so it's up to you. Now, the header and footer are important. Those will be used in the final report, and they appear at the top and bottom of the whole thing. And so we might want to add a copyright notice. Or some kind of security like do not distribute. And so that way you can add some kind of footer like that. You could also, if you wanted to put some styling in, you could put a horizontal line in. Something like that. It's quite nice. And then at the top we've got the description. This is the high-level text that appears and describes what the report does. It's pretty much okay for us, but you could change it if you wanted to. You can use any of the formatting options you want in the toolbar. So we could even, if you wanted to, we could just make that bold. Okay, so that's how we would change the header. Now the next thing, as I mentioned, is the category. This is a requirement report still, so we're going to leave it in that category. If for any reason you wanted to change the category for some reason, you could do that. That's up to you, but it will change the permissions the user needs to see the report. The other thing you can do is change the format. We don't care really what formats you choose. You can have any kind of report in any kind of format. Typically the formats that are more document centric, they have a lot of text and they flow, those typically don't format well in Excel. I mean, you can try it and you'll just paste it across the entire spreadsheet. But usually a format that's a table form will fit nicely into an Excel sheet. Things that are more document based, you can put them in Excel, but it's not going to be as easy to use. But that's up to you. So we could decide to change it. And then under that we have the sections, and then the first part we're talking about here are standard sections. That means take a standard report that we have that you like, that's close to what you want, and we want to turn it into a different report that's slightly different. And there's a question on the chat window. We're going to be doing the questions at the end, so if you have questions we will be doing them at the end. So what we'll typically want to do is make sure that this report matches what we want. So this is the report that we have, and let's go in here and customize it. So first of all, the project overview. That's basically the report section at the top, which gives you the project name and the project description. So let me just bring up my report. This is the report we generated. This is what it is here. It's this section right here, name of report, and it's also the description field. These come from the project. So if your project changes name or project changes description, this would change. Now we don't want to change this particularly, but just to show you what it looks like, you can click on customize, and you can see right here, we haven't got a header for this section, we haven't got a footer. We don't really need one. It does have this template. Now the template is actually what's being used to generate the report. I'm just going to open up a text editor. Notepad is pretty good. And if I paste this in here, it's basically an XML document, and it's generating that section we saw, this section right here, the project one and the description. And what it's doing, it's taking the name of the project, which is project ID and then the name, and it uses simple XML selectors to take the content of that data from the project and put it in. And we're putting it into a div title1 class, and we're putting the description into a simple paragraph tag. So what we're doing, if we go back to our original idea, is we're taking the data in the system, we're querying it, we're getting this XML data, and we're then basically using that to generate this HTML using this template. So this template takes our XML data from SpiraTeam and turns it into something that's viewable by a human, which looks like this. Now one thing you can do is, suppose you don't know what the XML is, because obviously we know the XML schema, we've worked with this every day. People often want to know, well, which elements are available. If I wanted to have the project creation date at the name of it, could I do that? And how would I do that? So the first thing we would say is, go back to your report configuration, and you have the option to always run the report in raw XML format. And that shows you all of the data that's available. And this is really important, because when you want to create a custom report, you need to know what data is actually available in that XML data packet to turn into the report. So run it as raw XML, do create report, and it will run. And this time, instead of getting a nice document that I can view, it's actually going to give me a XML data packet, and as a person writing the report, I can use that to see what's available. Here we go. And so you'll see here, I have the name of the report, I have project data and project. So if you look at what I'm doing is, I am selecting project data, project, right here, project data, project ID is available, project group ID is available, name is available, description is available. Creation date is available too, so is website. So if I wanted to show the website associated with it, I could do that very easily. I'll go back actually here to my template, and I'm going to put the name of the website in. I'll put in a separate paragraph. So I go in here, I can do it either here or in Notepad. Put in website. And if I hit save, and I hit save again, we've made a change to the report. If I go back into reporting, and I go in here and I choose my detailed report without metadata, and I'll keep HTML, and I'm just going to run it as is. You can now view the report, and you'll see we've now got the website. And if we wanted to spend more time on it, we could put an A tag and make it an actual clickable link if we wanted to. But that's how you would change the report. So we've taken that very simple top section and we've added a URL into it. So the next thing we want to do was remove some of this metadata. So to do that, we're going to go back to our custom reporting. Let me remove some of these. And we go back into our edit reports. Just close some of these down. And if you go here, you go edit reports, and we'll find our one that was the requirements detail without metadata. Hit edit. And let's go into the next section, which was the requirements detail. So what we want to do here is we want to, first of all, let's add a header to it, because before we get into the actual content, we could even say, this section displays all of the requirements with the information under it. And we could even put a heading in if we wanted. So we go in here and say requirements list. So that's a nice footer. And then the template here is also used to generate the data. So exactly the same way as we saw for the project home, this XML query, and this is the template, this is building out that report. And so if you remember what we generated, let me just go back and run it again so we have it in front of us. We want to basically remove all that meta information that's at the top of it. And so that's basically this information under the description. And it's all stored in our report as a table. So we go in here, we could actually remove all of it really easily. We just go in here and we're going to remove that whole table section. And so take that and we're going to paste that in right here. Hit save. Hit save. So now when we run our report, I need to run it again. With the change, what we'll now see is that whole top section gone. So now we have a list of requirements. We have our URL. We also have our new heading we added, and we have our introductory text under the heading. Under that, we have our requirements in order, and we now have our comments, test coverage, link requirements, defects, tasks, all the things that we want to see, but we don't have all that meta information in the way. So that's very easy. Now it's easy to remove things. The question is, how would we add something? So let's say we wanted to change something. Let's say we want to add something to the comments or maybe the test coverage. What we would do is to add something, you'll want to know what data is available. So the easiest thing, in my opinion, is to take the report configuration, choose XML as the option, run the entire report again as XML. And the XML report will show you all of the data that's available. And so this printable version, like this, and then the XML version, they show you what it's going to look like and they show you what data is available. And you put the two together, and that lets you determine how you modify things. And you do have a lot of flexibility. I mean, XML templates do allow you to do calculated fields. You can do search. You can do textual comparisons. You can have if-then logic. So you can write a very powerful report using the full power of XSLT. Some of that's outside the scope of what we can do in this webinar, but you can certainly use it to have if-then sections. We do that actually in our reports. For example, if it's a summary requirement, we actually change the styling, and then if it's a detailed requirement, in the test case report, we bold it if it's a folder. So you can do things like that, where if it's a certain format, you can change how it displays. You can do comparisons on any of the data. So there's a lot of flexibility in this templating language. But the simplest thing to do is to basically add some information. So if we go in here, let's look at our report. Let's say we want to do something to the test coverage. So we'll look at requirement 5. We'll search in here for it. There it is. Requirement 5. If we look under requirement 5, there's some custom fields. We hid those by taking out that section. We've got some discussions. These are our comments. So the name of it, the ID, the artifact, the text, we pretty much have all that there, so that doesn't make much sense. If we go into test coverage, we do have, let's have a look, the priority, we have the state, the priority here, the type, the status. So we might want to go into this report and let's say we currently show the test case ID, the name, the status, the estimated duration. We don't show the type or the priority. So that could be something we might want to have in our report. That would be useful to have. So to do that, we go back into our template and we'll search for test cases. Test cases. There you go. And so what this is doing, it's basically adding the test case section. If it exists in the XML, we display the subtitle, and then we create a data grid. And that data grid here is HTML, is this table you're seeing right here. So let's say we want to add priority and type. So I'll add type, and I'll add priority, like that. And then if you go further down, you look under the status, which is right here, execution status name. That's where we need to add it. So we need to go copy this, and I'm going to put 2 more instances of it in. And obviously those are the same, so that's not going to give me the right information. So I go back to my XML, and the fields I really want would be test case type name, that's the tag name, and test case priority name. Okay, so I'll change that. It's type first, so we want test case type name, and we want test case priority name. That's very good. Take the whole thing, and we're now going to paste it into the report. Go back here, customize, and there we go. Hit save, hit save. We've now updated the report, and then we go back, and we're going to go reload the report. Actually, I need to change it from XML to HTML, and then run it. So don't forget to do that, or you'll just get the XML again. And so what it's going to do now is taking my updated template, which is the XML that decides what's in the report, takes my data from the system, the XML data, and now it's going to generate a new version of the report with some additional fields. Hit view, and we now have type and priority. So we've customized the test coverage section to now show 2 more fields. So we've basically shown how you can remove something you don't want, which was all that meta information at the top, and how you add 2 more fields. And this works in all the formats. So if I was to choose MS Word or a PDF, all of these templates are cross-format. Because if you go back into the flow diagram, we're focusing right here. We're changing these templates. That's used by the report engine to make the intermediate report from the data. The final output report will always be the same when you change this. So I change it once, and it affects all the output formats. That's an important thing. Now, the next thing will be, if we go into the system, we want to talk about custom reporting. How do you do a custom section, and what does that do? So a custom section is a little bit different. That's when you want to create something that doesn't use the XML data we have. So if you look at this XML data here, this gives you a list of requirements, and for each requirement it gives you a lot of the information. It gives you all the test cases, all the tasks, all the change history. It's a very rich data packet, which is really good because we do all that querying and aggregating for you. And if you're doing anything where you're following the hierarchy in the system, the standard sections are usually the best way to go, because we've already done the hard work of looping through and getting all the data. But there are other times when you want to create something that's more of a summary. I want a table that counts the number of defects and counts them by status, or I want to create a very simple report which has several tables in it, which contains some summary metrics that really are harder to do because by looping through all this XML. And that's where the custom sections come in. They give you the freedom of SQL and being able to write a query and building an XML from that. So we'll do a couple of simple examples of doing that. So let's go in to back into the system. I'm going to close some of these windows down, and to do that, we're going to create a new report. And so we're going to call it sample requirements. Actually, let's do defects for a change. We did requirements last. We'll do sample incidents table report. The description we don't need, that's just for our documentation purposes. The header, we could decide to put a header in. Let's put something in, heading 1, sample webinar report or something. The footer we'll put in just to show we have one. We'll put in a horizontal line, or we'll put copyright my company. There we go. And this is a defect report, so we'll change the category, just change the permissions. We're going to let you run it in a variety of different formats, maybe even Excel. And then what we'll do is add a section. So a section this time will be a custom section. Now you can mix and match. So if we want to still display the project name and the project description, which could be useful, we can always add that. We can always add that in. So we'll just go ahead and add that. And then if you do that and choose create default template, it actually populates the XML for you. So that gives you the standard section that does the name and description of the project. And that's good, because we actually want that. Now the next thing will be, having got the name and description of the project, I want some real data. And so I add a custom section. And this time around, what we'll do is give it a name. We'll call it the list of defects by by priority, say. The header is the header for just this section, so it will come after the project name and after the project description. So we could say something like defect list. Here is a list of defects in the project. So that's heading 2, and there's our introductory text. That's all we really need. And now we come down to the SQL part. So what we do is we have a lot of what are called reportable entities. They're all here. These are basically predefined views we've created that actually make it easier to query the system. They do a lot of the common joins, so that when you get a defect, you don't have to get the type, the status, to get all the names. We do all those joining for you. And we also ensure that when we upgrade the system, these reviews, as much as possible, won't change, or change as little as possible anyway. So we always recommend you using these. And there are obviously not every single piece of the system is exposed here. So if there are things that we don't have, you can also email us and we will add them in future versions if there are things that you feel we haven't yet added. So for example, we're going to do something around defects. So we'll go into incidents. That's the core table, and it builds you a standard query. And this standard query uses a language called Entity SQL, Microsoft Entity SQL. It's very similar to database SQL. It's slightly different because it's object-based. So this select value R is equivalent in real SQL as select star. So if you see value, it just means select star. It means select everything to do with that entity. And so the structure is select value R means select all the fields from this is the collection, entities, report underscore incidents. So it gets me all the incidents. It calls it alias R. So you see capital R, it means it's an alias for incidents. And so we might decide that that's not very logical. We'll call it IN for incident, and we can change that to IN for like that. And that way it's more like SQL where you have an alias that actually matches the name of the table. The other thing you'll notice is this where clause. This is the standard SQL where clause. This simply says where the project ID equals something special. This $project ID means the current project. That way you can use the same report in multiple products without having to hard code the project number. And it mentions that right here. You can enter the SQL command and use the special tokens for project group or project. Now an important thing is if you don't have this part in, if I was to forget this part, it will still work. It will show me all the defects in the entire system across all projects. That could be very good, but if on the other hand the person running it doesn't have permissions, that will be very bad. So it's important when you write the reports to think about who's running the reports, which category they're in, and what data you want to expose. So it is default form. It's going to show me all of the defects in the current project. You could also do current project group. If you want to be able to report across the project group, you would just change it to project group ID equals project group, i.e. the current one. So that's how you would change it to display the current project group incidents. So just going back, we're going to run this one. Before we run it, it's always important to see what you're going to get. So to make it easier, we do have this preview option. Hit preview, and it's going to warn me that I've made a mistake because I had changed something. Probably I just realized in is actually a reserved word, so I should probably not use that as the table name. So I'll just put it back. There you go. And so there it is. It's giving me a list of all the fields in the database for incident and all the data. There's a lot of fields there. The reason why we show you all of them is because you don't necessarily know what they all are, and the list changes every time we update the version because we might improve the view, create new views, and so this is going to give you the live list of all the columns. So you can look at this and go, what do I really want? Well, I want the description. I probably want the name. Don't want the other stuff there. The name will be good. The status name will be good. The type name will be nice. So I can go in here and just select these like this. And the opener name I don't want. So you get to see all the fields. And once you've got that, you can go in here and say, well, now that I know what fields are available, let's go in here and do a little bit of customization. So I'll do r.name, r.description, and then I'll put these in. I'm pasting those in. Just need to put the R prefix. Unlike databases where you can omit the prefix, you do need to have a prefix R dot. Won't work otherwise. Hit preview. And now you get a slightly smaller table that's got the name of the defect, the description, the status, and the type. And we also want the priority. So we can try and guess that. R dot priority name. If we're wrong, we can just, yep, that worked. Priority name. And we want to sort it by priority. So using standard SQL, we can go in here. I'm just going to make it multi-line. We can go in here and do order by r dot priority name. So you have the flexibility of anything you want to do in SQL. You can also join tables together, and you can do things that are more powerful than you could do with just the XML language. Hit preview. Order by. I think I need to do that. There you go. Order by, and I'm doing it by priority name ascending. And now what I will do is once I've got a query that matches what I want, I can do create template, and that just builds me a standard XML template that displays it in the table. Normally you don't need to change this much. If I put it into my text editor, you'll see it's basically building a table for me with the words name, description, status name. The only reason you might change this XML is if you want to give it friendly names, like the incident name could be mixed case. Sorry, that's the selector. I want to change the title. You could change the name to be name, description could be middle case. Instance status name is probably a little bit long. You could just put status. So you can customize the template a little bit just to make it look a little cleaner. That's the only reason for doing it. You don't have to do that. It will work without it. Okay, so now we'll get that. And we'll put that back in here. Hit save. Hit save. And we'll go back to reporting. And we'll go run the report. Defects, here we go. And there it is. There was my report header. There is my project overview standard section, my defect list and name section, and under that's my table, name, description, status, type, priority. And because we're using HTML, you will see HTML embedded. There is a trick to actually get that to display properly, which I'll show you. And then we have the footer. So that's a very simple report. We could also run that in other formats like Word or Excel, and that would also come out just fine. If we go back to the report, one of the things that people often want to do is actually show the HTML, because that's styling that we want to actually embed. So if we go in here, we can actually choose an option in XML to do that. So we go in here, and if we go back into our template, where we select the description, there's a special option called disable output escaping equals, I think it's true. If you'd forget the syntax for this, because I've got a bad memory, you can always go online and just do XSLT, and that will give you the syntax. So I'm glad I checked, because it's actually yes and no, not true or false. So we'll do that again. Hit save, save, and we go back to our report. We'll reload it. There we go. We now get nice descriptions, and wow, big screenshot, instead of the horrible HTML tags. So that's important. And you can spend a bit more time and actually change the image tags to put a max size in, things like that. So there's things you can do to clean up the formatting as well. But that way we're getting real content, not just a bunch of tags. So that's how you would use the disable output escaping as well. And then for more complex reports where you want to do joins and things, there's a lot of reference material on our website about the SQL language and how you can do a join. We've also got some forums which actually contain users submitted reports. So we have some additional resources we put onto this PowerPoint. And everything from today is going to be shared. The video is going to be on YouTube. And we're also going to have this PowerPoint up as well. But this is also some references that we would recommend. And one of them would be, there's a blog which goes through roughly what I've shown you today. And then there's also some articles on custom reports which we've written. But then there's also this great forum where people are actually sharing reports. One of our customers suggested it. And it allows us to actually have conversations. So for example, someone wanted a custom report of how to link requirements to defects. And so we would publish that. Let me get a different one. Hold on. So there we go. So here you'll see actually an example where we have shared both the SQL you would use and the XSLT. So what we could do if we wanted to try this out, we can grab that, put it into our report, generate the template, and then either use the default, or you could use this one where we've changed the names and put that in. So we do have this great resource where we have people who are power users sharing reports, and if customers ask us for a custom report through the help desk, rather than replying back directly, what we usually are doing now is actually writing the answer into the forum and then sending a link back to the help desk ticket, because that way we find that people who ask for a report are probably not the only ones doing it. A lot of people probably do want the same information.